into the reality of it. We call it the new reality for survivor, recovery and growth reality for MICE businesses in distress. Practical lessons for MICE industry practitioner for professionals. So, Prof, the floor will be yours. We would like you to share with us how we can leverage digital transformation for business continuity, revival, and whatever that we can think of to make sure that the industry move forward through technology. So the floor is yours, Professor. And thank you once again for making time of your busy schedule to be with us. I think you show us exactly what you did in Ghana 3-4 years ago. So we look forward to that. Thank you. Please welcome the professor. Those who can applaud him and who can see him, you can do that via messages. Thank you. Gary, please, you are joining us for the rest of the day. Glenn, please, we need you here. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to see you virtually, at least. It's been a while since we met last time in Ghana, and we were discussing about tourism in Africa and how we can take things forward. We have learned how to operate in a very different ways, actually, and we had to learn how to engage with all kinds of technologies in order to be able to survive and in order to be able to engage with our audiences. We had to learn how to operate in very, very different ways and make sure that we can operate in different formats in order to survive. I think the MICE sector has suffered the most. And I would like to take you through some slides so we can share some thinking, and then hopefully that will raise a lot of questions and we're going to discuss later. So let me go into here and see if I can share this with you. Okay, so you must be able to see my slides now. Great. So before we start, a lot of the things that we are discussing are coming to the project that I spent most of my lockdown period doing, which is the Encyclopedia of Tourism Management and Marketing, and also the Tourism Review, the journal I'm editing. And we just brought into live yesterday the Encyclopedia of Tourism Management and Marketing. You can see a lot of the things that they'll be developing over the next year or so. And in my statement and the introduction of the encyclopedia, I'm just bringing together the tourism system, which has got the travel generating region and the tourism destination region, and all the magic that is happening in that. And then you've got the resources on the one side and the value co-creation on the other side. And the system is sitting on top of the tourism system, and the tourism pyramid, which has got elements of planning, management, and strategy. It has got market forces, exogenous variables, and the technologies and the infrastructure that enable all of those things to work together. Now, this is the beginning of tourism, and this is exactly what tourism is about. And we need to actually coordinate all these different elements in order to be able to operate efficiently and enable the tourism industry to operate on a global basis. So MICE is part of this, and it is actually using specific attractions, specific amenities like conference centers, and it has got a particular, it's a particular market segment that enables people to travel primarily for business and to meet other people in destinations. But still, it is actually affected by the market forces, all the exogenous variables, and especially COVID right now in the last year has stopped us from doing most of the things that we're doing. COVID is a crisis unlike any other, and it has already cost the life of 2.7 million people. Unfortunately, that number is growing, and more people are affected by that. And you can see in different countries how many people have died. And we've seen that there's more than 120 million cases already around the world. And unfortunately, this is still going. This is the European situation. You can see that the UK has suffered dramatically from that, with 125,000 people dead. The reason I'm saying that is that quite often people don't really appreciate the magnitude of the problem. And as you can see over the months, this has progressed, and it has not gone away. It has actually become much worse, and the new variants that come from different countries, including South Africa, has actually given us a very difficult time to manage and contain and manage the virus. What I normally say, it's a war. It's not a health issue. It's a war. And like any wars, you've got a lot of casualties, both in infrastructure, but also in human life, and incredibly difficult financial conditions and economics that are coming at the end of it. These are our heroes, and they are surviving, and they are supporting us every day. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of our fellow citizens all over the world in the most inhumane conditions. A lot of people have had to been isolated. They died alone. They were buried alone, and you couldn't really pay respect to them. I've got to say, I've experienced that myself. My mom didn't die from COVID, but died during the COVID era, and we have not been able within the year to actually pay respect to her in the way we need. So tourism internationally went down by 74%, and a lot of trips were cancelled, and a lot of activities was not happening. So this is British Airways planes parked in Bournemouth Airport because there's nowhere they can go. But even during the pandemic and during this year, we've seen a lot of heroes actually supporting what I call the business as unusual, supporting us to fly and supporting us to operate somehow these businesses. And these people, we need to recognize them because they've put themselves on the front line to support especially those who had to travel. And those who had to travel, they had to travel for business reasons, for health reasons, to make sure that we fight effectively the pandemic ourselves in this kind of situation. And I remember the good days. This is probably 2011 or 2012 when I was with you in Cape Town in South Africa at the Tourism Frontiers Conference, and we're discussing about how can we enable Africa to go forward and enable all these new developments to take advantage of technology and to develop things. And of course, business travelers then end up doing wonderful things and enjoy some of the fantastic opportunities that destinations have got to offer. And that was a beautiful day in Cape Town, where the two oceans meet. And some other conference, this is in China, where you've got a conference with about 2,000 people all coming together to discuss different things. This is in Bournemouth University, where we're doing our graduation in the conference center in Bournemouth. And this is what it is right now. It's kind of empty and desperately needs for people. I think given the war, I came early and I start talking about humanity, solidarity, leadership, and resilience. And I think these four words will still need to be with us because we're still in the middle of the war. Humanity means that we really need to be humane to all of our stakeholders. And solidarity means that we need to provide care for all the people that are around us. Those may be customers and tourists and travelers. It may be local people, it may be employees, it may be everybody in our ecosystem. And I think it's really, really difficult to see who is affected badly in this situation and how can we take care of these people, because they are really in a difficult situation. We need to look after them. I think resilience is really important to find the mechanisms to make sure that that we have got the proper methods and the proper understanding in order to remain in this business and develop our resilience in order to be able to go to the next stage and get out of this situation. And in order to do that, we need leadership. And we've seen some leadership around in different places, but we need more engagement with different players to actually ensure that we can manage the resources we've got, the difficult epidemiological side, epidemiological trends and the loads and the different kind of situations we've got in real time, and come back with the most appropriate actions. What we've seen is that during this time, governments have been trying really, really hard to actually address those issues. But what we've seen is that the epidemiological information and the data that's coming out, they're forcing governments to keep changing. So in the UK, the government has changed decisions more than 65 times within a year. And of course, that creates a whole range of different problems for the industry because they cannot plan. And we cannot plan and we cannot actually operate on longer term. The longer term, if one of the things that COVID has brought forward is that the longer term has become 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, everything can change. And that is really difficult, especially for those of you who are working on the MICE environment, where long-term planning takes a couple of years, really. And I've organized a lot of conferences around the world, and I know exactly how these things operate. We normally take about 2 years by the time that you are announcing where you're going to go as an association, by the time you sign all the contracts, by the time that you bring all the different elements of the tourism offering together, by the time you are actually asking for papers, and we normally evaluate papers. And by the time we bring everybody together in the place, it takes 2 years. So all that has collapsed to 2 weeks, and that is really, really complicated. What we see is that we are going towards a future, and we start seeing light at the end of the tunnel. And the light at the end of the tunnel means that, first of all, we know what to do in order to stay safe. Those of you who are on this conference have normally, have hopefully remained safe throughout, and you hadn't had to go through this terrible disease. And to do that, it's hands, it's masks, it's space, and avoiding travel, unfortunately. But what we see is the race for vaccination, and the race for vaccination is evident around the world. And I was very privileged to have my first vaccine. I'm desperately waiting for my second vaccine so I can start getting around. However, as you can see from this map, the vaccination race is primarily done in the developed world, and it's mainly done in some of the few countries that have managed to get vaccines for some reasons, and they've progressed really, really fast with vaccinations. So currently, Israel is very well ahead of everybody else. The UK, the United Arab Emirates is second, the UK is third, and I think the US is fourth in that race. But I can see a lot of Africa hasn't started the vaccination processes yet. And that really worries me, because until until everybody has got an ammunition rate of about 7%, we are not going to be in a position to actually get rid of the virus. So we need immunity to 7% of the population globally. And that means that we need to democratize the way that we operate with the vaccination. And also we need to have much more efficient supply chains and supply lines so we can get more people vaccinated much, much faster. You can see here the percentage of vaccination. You can see Israel, this is a few days ago, but you can on the 15th of March, but you can see Israel going to 110%, United Arab Emirates 66%, UK about 39%, Chile about 36, and then you see the world is about 4.89, about 5%. So we need really to progress this, and we need to engage in much more, much faster in the way we're going forward. There's some good news, and some of the good news is that domestic tourism is booming, especially where I'm based in Bournemouth. We had a lot of people who actually didn't travel away, but they stayed from different places in the UK. They came to Bournemouth, and they did what we call staycation. There's also the New Forest, which is very close to where we are, and a lot of people discovered new places. Sometimes they discover too much. This is Bournemouth in the summertime, where lots and lots of people actually came to see us. And a lot of countries around the world are getting ready. This is Greece, and we start recognizing that a lot of customers, the only thing that they want is to travel. And you can see how desperate people are to travel. And this is the new campaign from the Greek Tourism Board that says, all you want is Greece. I think one of the key issues to be able to move forward is to prioritize vaccination for the tourism industry. And for those people who are on the front line and they're meeting a lot of people in their jobs. I think this is really, really important in order to be able to progress some of these things. And some of the countries are doing that. This Singapore Airlines, and Singapore has prioritized their staff, their airline staff to be vaccinated. There's a big debate about whether those who are vaccinated will be allowed to travel versus those who are not, who will go through a different kind of process in terms of testing and making sure that they are safe and healthy before they can travel. The Qantas chief executive, Alan Joyce, came early and he said that we will need to have vaccinated passengers before they can get on a flight. And of course, in order to have that, you need to have a certification. You need to have some kind of a passport that says that you are certified. And some of the cruise companies have done similar kind of things. They've said that they need certification. Now, this is not new in terms of having certification of vaccinations. This is my certification passport with my other two passports that show that what kind of vaccines I've done. And last time that we met in Ghana, I had to show that to the officials before I was allowed in the country. And I remember some of the delegates in the Ghana conference were not actually allowed in because they didn't have the certification of vaccinations in there. We can see the rainbow after the rain, and we can see some very optimistic kind of trends that we can see around. We see that a lot of people are desperate to travel, and for the first time ever, they kind of realize how important travel is in their life. And the other good thing is that most of the assets that we've got for co-creating the travel experience are still there. So it's a war, but we haven't really lost all the assets, and it's really about getting us to be able to reignite tourism safely in order to take us forward. I think it's also important to start realizing that we're not going back, but we're going forward to a very different kind of environment. And that different environment will operate with different rules and regulations, and will also have a different demand. The customer has changed. So the future will be much more about agility rather than planning, and will enable organizations to actually make decisions and progress with things at a very short period of time. So the timelines of 2 years that we used to have in events may go away, because agility will mean that we'll have a very different way of operating in the future. I think herd immunity is absolutely critical, and smart and agile tourism will be very instrumental in resilience and reigniting tourism, getting everybody ready to be able to travel or to receive travelers safely in their destinations. A lot of technology and a lot of smart solutions you can see out there. And some of the solutions are basically looking to what are the epidemiological data, so big data that are happening throughout the tourism industry and the global society, and engaging with different places to understand what is the real-time situation in that place and what's the prediction in the next 3 to 4 weeks of what's going to happen there, and taking measures accordingly. A lot of smart systems will come forward, and those smart systems will facilitate track and trace, so we'll know where people have gone and who have they met, and so we can protect all of these people that we have met in particular places. And of course, China and Korea and some of the Asian countries have been much more proactive on those things, partly because they are using technology in much more innovative way than other places in the world, and also because they had to deal with SARS and different pandemics in the past. So they already had some kind of certification that enabled people to travel and get out of their house and move around more freely than others. The European Commission has just brought the digital green certificate out that will enable those people who are vaccinated against COVID to have a certificate. So it means that they are more free to move around without necessarily negative tests. Or so the people that they've got already some kind of immunity from the vaccination, from COVID, if they've gone through COVID, will have priority to travel, and they will also be exempt from testing that may be required for those who have not. Thailand has already created the Thailand Plus application that is being used, and they are collecting information, and then they are classifying people according to the level of risk that they may have in terms of COVID, and also engage in conversation in real time. And that's a little video that I don't have the time to play, but you can have a look on what the Thai government is doing to protect visitors and also their local people. Now, we talk a lot about travel passports and how this is going to happen. I think IATA is developing the Travel Pass application, and the Travel Pass will be integrating the health information, the vaccination certificates, and everything else with the ticket, with the passport, the security information, all of those things together. So airlines will be able to operate those things, and it will provide transparent information to governments as well. Air New Zealand, Emirates, a lot of airlines are now piloting that, and Singapore Airline 308 landed in London on the 17th of March, and it was the first passenger that used the IATA Travel Pass to arrive in London and avoid quarantine and being able to move forward. I think what those apps will do is create a secure digital version of the passport on a mobile device, and it will verify that that passengers are okay to travel. They have got either a negative test or they've got a vaccination certification, so they'll be able to go through immigration procedures. Now, a lot of different hotels and conference facilities have also used different innovative kind of ways. This is from Hotel Icon Hong Kong, that is taking the temperature of people when they arrive in, and they've got different kind of things that protocols to actually reduce the impacts that and the danger and the risk that COVID is bringing. And some of these things are deployed in shopping centers or in airports or in places where a lot of people are going through. I think it's really critical to understand how we are planning facilities, and what can we do in order to reduce the epidemiological load, and also to enable free flow of air, and also to find ways that consumers are going through different places, they're sitting in different places, so we can improve the flows in a particular location. And as far as conference is concerned, you'll see distances. You've seen this already, but increasingly, some of my friends, they've moved into virtual kind of environment. This is the Greek panorama that they've produced, where it's a very virtual event. It's operating like this. But this is the experience that consumers will see. Now, this is not that we don't want to go back to physical conference, and of course we will go back as soon as we can. But I think in the meanwhile, we need to kind of look into hybrid events, and we need to look into how can we engage with technology, because realistically, we're not going to be in a position to actually return to that very quickly. I'm afraid I've got to say that, because a lot of companies will be very reluctant to allow their employees to travel internationally, and because of the risk that they're involved. And I think technology will also help us with managing the different devices nearby, from opening doors, so it will be a very touchless kind of environment where we don't need to touch things. And of course, we'll disinfect different facilities as we're going along, and gradually we'll have robotics that are coming forward. And this is before autonomous vehicles are coming forward, and they'll enable us to move around with very different kind of transportation arrangements. So this is a very, very interesting and very long conversation about what autonomous vehicles are going to do. And that's something that we also look into gamification, how gamification will help us develop applications in tourism and also in the MICE sector to engage people in different things. Now, when I say a lot of these things, people are thinking that's something that's going to happen in the very long future, but in fact, it's happening already. This is the new Century Grand Hotel in Hangzhou in China. I was there last year. And this is my little friend that used to follow me around. Then we became very friends, because it was an interesting piece of equipment. And this robot could actually deliver things in different floors and engage in some kind of conversation using artificial intelligence. Now, this is a very quick way of actually discussing several of these things. These are the publications and the research that we've been doing at Bournemouth University in the last few years to be able to prepare something like that. Thank you very much. This is where you get in touch with me if you would like to exchange some of views and develop some of these opportunities forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give the professor a round of applause. Yeah, thank you, Prof. We do appreciate the presentation. I think this is great. We heard a lot about the work, where we came from, where we are, and where we are going. I think, as we say, we want to look at digital transformation from where we are coming from and how that will impact us going forward. And I think you laid a very good foundation across the entire value chain in relationship with the pandemic, the challenges that we face going forward. So I'm going to give to Naledi. And Naledi is going to engage you, take questions from the floor, ensuring that we understand the technological component, particularly in relationship with the MICE sector and across the entire, I'll call it the demand and supply side of the MICE, and what kind of technologies. We got a couple of experts here as well who possibly pose a few questions, and we'd like to engage to make sure that the delegates get the best out of your presentation and what.
Thank you very much. I'll try to satisfy the demand. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Kwakye. Thank you, Professor, for your very valuable insights. Again, to encourage everyone in the room and online to please submit questions or raise your hand if you're in the room. You did a very good job of laying out where things are now and the state of the industry. So I'm interested in getting your perspective in terms, from a digital transformation perspective, what role does technology and digital play in actually providing solutions, especially from an operational standpoint? You talked a little bit about how, timelines have now gone from 3 years to 2 weeks and the like. So how do we use technology and digital platforms to help mitigate that change?
I think if anything, that COVID is going to leave behind is a level of digitization beyond belief, because we had to learn how to do everything digitally. We had to learn how to order food, how to teach, how to engage in conversation, how to speak to our loved ones, and those things have brought the digitization progress to about 5 years ahead of its time. So what's happening is that consumers will be much more capable of dealing with the technology and the digitization. And the other thing that we see is that the younger generations, they're already born with technology and they understand how to do these things. And those people who are more than 20 years old, they've never experienced anything other than smartphones and a digitization that enable them to do everything from their phone. Now, the tourism industry is primarily managed by people who are digital immigrants. They are people that they grew up in a very offline environment, very analog environment, and they didn't necessarily have the opportunity to actually engage with so much technology yet. And I think we need to learn how we can re-engineer all our processes and look into what do we do in the normal world and what can we digitize, how can we digitize it, and how we can change value chains and value systems to co-create value by engaging the different kind of players and the different kind of technologies forward. So in the mice situation, you'll see a lot of hybrid technologies coming forward, that you'll see that people that they are like what we do right now, people that they are in the same room, that they have got a conversation, they can enjoy that kind of social aspect, and also the conversations that are happening after the finish of the sessions on the coffee breaks, but also you'll engage with people that they are far away. So 12 hours away from you in the UK. And in a normal circumstances, that would have meant that I had to fly out these 12 hours to be with you, spend 3 or 4 days, and then fly back. A lot of those things will change, and a lot of those things will engage different kind of technology and different kind of stakeholders in different zones and different places. So it's basically COVID is forcing the re-engineering of the tourism industry, and COVID is forcing us to think differently the way we do.
As we re-engineer, and so much is a digital component, how do we address the gaps in terms of access to technology, whether it's from cost, from a bandwidth perspective, so whether it's from a participation and limited participation, or even the desired recipients being able to consume and access the information, but there's barriers due to that lack of access? Is that not only just going to grow as we all move towards digital platforms, or whatever version, whatever that digital transformation looks like?
I think you're right. I think you're talking about digital divide effectively, and digital divide it's a very important issue around the world, and there are many different reasons for digital divide. One is financial and economic kind of situation, but also knowledge, expertise, how we are getting things, organized, and how we operate. But I think one of the things that we learned during COVID is that technology is constantly being simplified and become more accessible. So if I was saying to people, a year ago, before COVID, that they'll do their classes online. They'll be very, very nervous on teaching online. And if I was saying to all the people that you're going to have a story with your grandchildren on Skype or on Zoom a year ago, it would have been absolutely no way. Now it has become the norm for a lot of people. So the digital divide is a real thing. It exists out there. But what we see is that technology simplifies things, becomes cheaper, much more efficient. And I think governments started realizing that the deployment of technology is exactly the same thing like main utilities like water or electricity. So what you'll see is that basic technology is being available to everybody in an affordable cost.
Along those same lines, in terms of concerns especially from small and medium enterprises, there's a question that we received. Will some countries, particularly in Africa, be left behind with MICE moving to hybrid conferencing? And how should governments respond to minimize the job losses in these sectors? Because the current funding is not enough. So as we're moving to hybrid and maybe eliminating some roles which may have been in person and the lack of use of venues, how are we going to address that?
Okay, I think there's a re-engineering everywhere, and I don't think that it will be possible to avoid some of the impact. But I think technology is actually providing new opportunities for people to actually do wonderful things. And we've all seen in television innovations that people have actually adopted over the period of COVID, where someone started little businesses and entrepreneurial activities from their garage or from their dinner table, which did not have the opportunity to do before. So I think you really need to think, how can you actually add value? Because the technology is reducing distance. So a lot of the issues that are related with economic development in Africa have always been about distance to the main markets. And I think what technology is giving you the opportunity to do, and that's for small business and for large business. Actually, small business are better equipped to do that because they are more agile and they can do things very quickly and they can change things. While a large business, they've got very difficult structures and really complicated kind of legacy systems that's very difficult for them to change. So what we see is innovation. And I think that's something really, really important, is the fact that the technological adoption is coming from innovation and leadership. It's not coming from technology. So technology is the tool to actually do things, but you need leadership and you need innovation. And don't worry so much about the technology, because the technology is available. There are so many apps, there are so many things that are available out there, and many of them are actually free right now. And in my experience, a lot of people are calling for the government, wherever they are, to support them, but they've not trained themselves, they've not engaged themselves properly, they have not developed their skills, and they expecting someone else to do it for them. I don't think this is going to happen. And I think it's a great opportunity for the younger generation that's coming with education and innovation, to take the tools forward. And one of the things I keep saying to a lot of people around the world is that you really need to engage your kids in co-creating value in a different way, because this is the only way they know. While we have to learn different ways, we're digital immigrants, they're digital natives. So this is the only way that they know how to operate.
So it's more about innovation, and the technology is the platform or the road, so to speak, towards those solutions.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll give you another example that, there's several things that are happening in Africa, and I'm trying to support them. And the most effective technology that is being used is WhatsApp. So there are groups on WhatsApp that share information, they're creating networking, they're finding information, they're engaging different people at the very highest level, ministerial level, you know, global business leaders level, and it's all happening on WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is absolutely free. So you can see a lot of things that are happening out there that are supporting us technologically. But I think the critical thing is to have the leadership and the innovation to move us forward and to understand the business re-engineering that's required in order to do that.
Well, along those lines, another question that came in is, how do we accelerate this process, or how do we accelerate digital literacy to make digital the new norm for African markets? You know, what are the platforms or best practices or standards that should guide this journey? Because I think you'll probably find that everyone is in agreement in theory, but there still may be a block in terms of how do we get there? Yes, we need to sort of become more innovative, but what are the best steps in terms of getting there? What are the tools that we need to use, or what are some of those resources?
You'll be surprised with what I'm going to say, but you need to actually imitate your kids. The problem we've got is that the decision makers are primarily 50, 60 years old, and they don't understand these things, and they don't know that they don't understand these things. And then you've got the 20, 25 years old that they are absolutely immersed with technology, but they don't have the power. And if they're trying to do something, their boss says, why are you doing this way? We've always done it in a different way. So it's really about look into those people who understand these things and empower them to think differently and ask them, how would you do this? You know, right. I grew up that if I needed fruit, I need to go to the market. And you know, we don't really like to change habits, but this is how we grew up. Now, fruit is coming to you from a different source, and it's a very different way of thinking and living. And I think a lot of the decision makers have not made that kind of transformation to the new environment because we are digital immigrants and we don't know the new realities that we have got to face.
Now, the transportation we're talking about, it all costs, as we're talking about rethinking how we do events, how we communicate, all of the platforms, WhatsApp notwithstanding. Who is responsible for sort of making up those new costs? Which stakeholders is it, you know, on the association side, who's trying to host an event? Is it supposed to come from the governments? Is it the venues? How do we account for, you know, the rise and all of this technology that we normally wouldn't have to consider? And yes, even you know, the thermometer check, infrared, all of those things.
Yes, but we had a whole range of different needs and different kind of costs that we had. We had to pay enormous amount of money on conference venues. We had to pay enormous amount of money for all the people that we had to employ. We had to pay for a lot of other costs. And I think what we're trying to see is how can we re-engineer the industry and how can we re-engineer everything and the costs and the revenues, because we are not going to go back to what we had in 2019. We're going to go forward to 2023, 24. That's what we need to be planning for. Because a lot of the things that we were doing in the past will be very different to what we'll see in the future. And some of the costs and the revenues will change. But I have to warn everybody that the economic tsunami that is coming at the back of the COVID will be dramatic. So a lot of fat that we had in the industry is going to disappear. Let me give you a few examples. I'm not sure how many governments and how many universities and how many people will pay their employees to go to a conference 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 miles away and pay them $5,000 to $6,000 each to go there. If they can make some of these connections, some of these conversations over electronic media, I'm afraid that, and especially governments, will have to pay for all these health related expenses that we are experiencing. and all the other expenses and the loss of tax, the loss of revenue, the loss of investment that we have experienced in the last year. So I'm afraid for the next few years, it will be very, very different. And I think we need to look into both income and expenditure and see how we can restructure that business model. And I think we really need to look into how we can create value in a better way in the future. And we have to be honest with ourselves. There are opportunities there, and there are also challenges there. And some people will not survive, but some people will come back with innovations and change the way they're thinking. So a lot of your questions are really about how can we go back to 2019? And I think that is the wrong kind of way of thinking about it. I think the question should be, how do we go forward to 2024, 2030? Because a lot of things would have changed drastically, and we'll need to go in a different way of doing things. So this is the re-engineering.
No, agreed. I'd like to take a question from the floor.
I'll ask. Prof, when one considers that the African continent relies very heavily on the mice business, when the mice business in Africa relies very heavily on the association market, and specifically the associations that are rotating from continent to continent. Looking at your stats that you put up earlier with regards to how far behind Africa is with the rollout of the vaccine, do you see Africa falling behind with those rotational association conferences for many, many more years to come? So those conferences will start happening again, those big association conferences, but they will be hosted in countries where the vaccine has been rolled out to over 70%. And so how do you see that impacting Africa long term?
I'm afraid you're right. I think associations, and I used to be a president of association, and I've been involved with many associations, will have the responsibility to their members to actually make sure that they are taking them to places where they are risk-free or the risk is managed. That's one thing. The second thing is associations in general. I think in the past, if you want to network, you had to be part of an association. I think increasingly we find less people becoming members of association. I'm not sure how many people have actually renewed their membership of associations this year. And especially when the economic situation is coming forward, would someone pay $200 per year to an association? And what is the value of this $200? And is this the best way of spending money? I think there are a lot of issues that we will need to actually look into the way we were doing things. Don't forget that associations are primarily a thing that came historically. So you had to actually be part of the association to be associated with different people. And now increasingly you can associate with people on LinkedIn. So there's a major issue about associations to begin with. The second thing is, would associations do conferences the way they were doing them? Let's hope that they'll be doing it in the future, but my kind of, I'm suspecting that it's going to change that. And then the next thing is, where would these associations going to take people? And I guess they'll take people to where they feel that they're safer to go. I think in the meanwhile, we'll need to look into the domestic market, the short-haul market. I see people that they would like to travel desperately, but I don't necessarily see that people will be traveling, 10 hours on a flight very easily until all this thing is kind of settled.
Just some sort of North American perspective on that same question. I think for some associations, when they gather, it's not necessarily just members. So they're still, and that's evolved over time as well. I think that's something that we've seen change. And even through COVID, as we've engaged and increased the audience that we're normally speaking to, that's an audience that we can then draw on in the future as well. And I think what we saw during COVID is more people were then gathering in ways they hadn't gathered before, or organizations were starting to gather and grow audiences. And so I think that those are sort of new markets that may not be traditionally as associations that can be tapped into for events. I know a number of different organizations that were convening thousands of people on a quarterly basis, and they're anxious to travel and connect in person. So I think, you know, to the professor's point, the way we do things moving forward may be different. It may not be a traditional association market, but it may be an organized group that has somehow come together in an organized manner.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me respond to that for a second. I think you're absolutely right, and I think whoever adds value in one way or another will actually attract people, and that will move forward. Whether these associations or different formations of different kind of structures, and whether these are flexible and they keep moving around, that's something we'll see. But you're absolutely right. The need for connectivity became very evident during COVID, but I think the format of connectivity may be very different in the future.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Prof. One last question. Don't you think that digitalization will drop off to a degree, because at the moment the globe is forced into it? I mean, there's various sectors, and forget the association market, but various business sectors that rely on those networking opportunities. And so whilst digitalization pre-event is efficient and cost effective, and it appeals to a larger audience, the return of investment post-event is significantly lower. And so whilst, yes, you're casting your net wider, perhaps you're not casting your net efficiently, and you're seeing now exhibitions and trade exhibitions in Asia launching up with thousands of people that are coexisting in the new world. Surely that is an indicator that, yes, hybrid and digital is here to stay, but to a lesser degree than we're experiencing currently.
I think you're right and wrong at the same time. I think you're right that that they are here to stay, and I think you're right to say that to a less degree of what we're doing currently, because currently we don't have any alternative. But I think the hybrid thing, and I think they'll be operating in parallel. And even if you are an event, there may be different events that they're happening. So physically, you may be in one location, let's say where you are in Cape Town right now, but there may be other things that they are technology facilitated that you didn't have in the past. So you may, let me give you an example. For example, you may be in a room, but you may have parallel sessions, and you may be able to attend another parallel session in parallel to your physical location. So there'll be a lot of different ways of digitization that is coming instead of, and also to augment the real experience. And I think it's not either or. I think it's physical and digital working together to create the synergies to take things forward and to create more value. So I think it will be a combination of the two things that they'll be bringing us forward. And I think we need really to imagine in better ways how this is going to happen, because I think our brain is still going back to what we know, but I think we really need to go forward to what we can do in terms of how we'll be able to operate these things.
Thank you, Prof. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up now. We've run out of time. Thank you all for your questions and contributing to this discussion. Professor, thank you very much for your time and your insights today.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed, especially the questions kind of challenging my thinking as well. I really appreciate it. And I hope to be with you guys sometime very soon. I missed Africa and miss South Africa. It'll be fantastic to see all good friends. Thank you.
Until then, thank you.
The professor is gone?
I'm still
All
here.
right. Prof, we want to say a very big thank you to you for making time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we would like you to support us in sending a message out to your network across the world that Africa is ready and we are ready to welcome them. This is one of the facilities that is proving that we are ready. The two gentlemen that spoke to you now from Centricity Conference Center in Cape Town, I got one of the, I would say, world-class facility that is comparable to the rest of the world, that any event with strict COVID protocols could be held. And we got a lot of members, South Africa Tourism, Houghton Tourism, and ourselves and our partners are ready to welcome. So we'd like you to send a message. And we thank you and appreciate you for making this contribution.
Thank you very
Please,
much. Stay safe. Stay
We
safe.
will. Thank you. And Naledi, thank you very much for joining us. She been staying in the US. She decided to come and support us for this. I know. So thank you very much for supporting us. We got Africans also doing great things in other parts of the world in the same space. So we thank you. I think the next one is, Professor, thank you. We would like to see you here next week. The gentlemen are waiting for your next conference of your association.
Would love to. Take good care.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think the next session is we are going to have Professor